Hey everyone, welcome to Snowpal's Software Development and Architecture podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. We have Vidhi Ora, who's a certified emotional practitioner from the Priority Academy and a legal contract lead with the prestigious Big Four. Beyond her professional accolades, Vidhi is a people person, finding joy in connecting with individuals from diverse backgrounds. When she's not navigating legal complexities, Vidhi dedicates her time to making a positive impact on people's lives. Vidhi, thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Krish, for inviting me again to the podcast. And I'm very happy to be a part of this. Thank you so much. And you can just get started with the new topic
Yep,
we have for
yeah,
today.
perfect. Yep. For folks who haven't watched the previous conversation that Vidhi and I had, I highly recommend you go check out that podcast. Now, you could watch them in any sequence, but if that's said, you might get a little bit more context if you watch them in order. But I'll leave that to you. Today's topic is going to be impact of social media on mental health. Uh, but as a disclaimer, neither Vidhi nor I claim to be experts in this on this topic. We're not certified practitioners. We are two people who happen to be in two different professions, but have an interest in having a conversation about this topic. That's the reason why we are having these conversations. So that with that disclaimer out of the way, I just want to get started. Vidhi, let me have you kick this one off. Impact of social media on mental health. Where do you want to start this conversation?
So I want to start the conversation with the fact that, we all are humans. And of course, we do have a need of companionship with people. And we do like connecting. But nowadays I have seen instead of meeting people, connecting with people personally, a lot of people prefer spending a lot of time on social media, be it LinkedIn, be it Facebook, Twitter, you name it, and people have that on your phone handy all the time. So I guess, I of course do believe that social media has a lot of impact on us, the positive aspects as well. You can stay connected with people. You're not missing on anybody's birthdays and anniversaries, of course, with social media on hand. And it's a vital source of connection, no doubt about it. But I guess again, everything has the pros and cons. So I see a lot of cons instead of pros here, as I can
No,
say,
no,
because
totally right. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I have seen a lot of people who think that they are suffering from loneliness or depression, anxiety. I don't think social media is helping them anyways. I think it's only adding on to it instead of just reducing their anxieties and their mental stresses. I have seen that. So I am also social media, not I would say a social media fan, but I do use it. Like I'm very, you will see me very often on LinkedIn posting on a lot of different topics, be it contract management, which I have been a part of for a very long time, and other social topics. I like doing that, but that is not because I am a social media fan and I like using social media. The only reason is that I enjoy writing. So I find LinkedIn as a platform where I can write whatever I want in terms of, professionally writing and not random stuff. But yes, I do use that. But having said that, people are using social media as a source to reduce their social anxiety and maybe, hiding their pains or the social issues which are going on their head or maybe some personal issues in their lives. So it is just a sort of, blanket to cover all those areas in their lives. But it is actually not helping the people in that way. So I guess it is an important thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to start this conversation, right? And let's take examples. So there's pros and cons. We take no matter what you take in life, there is always going to be pros. There's always going to be cons, right? You just have to balance them to see what where you want to be essentially. I can't remember the thing last time when there was an item where there was all pros but no cons, for instance, right? There's always a set of things that work in favor of something and not so much in favor of that
Absolutely.
same thing, right? So let's take this as an example. When you say social media, there is a negative connotation to a large extent, right? The first thought that seems to come, even though we all depend on it, a lot of our lives runs around it. We have, if not for LinkedIn, a lot of our lives professionally may or may not even function. For instance, right? It is very, very important that it does exist in that form, shape, and whatnot. But with that said, let's dig a little bit deeper into each of these. When we say social, like I'll take an example. We were at a restaurant not too long ago. Again, this is not judging anybody. There's no rights or wrongs. It's just sharing experiences. and trying to analyze those experiences and taking some liberties to having certain judgments, right? I want to have another disclaimer because this is a very sensitive topic. So we were at a restaurant. There was a family of four. Um, they were seated at a table not too far from ours. And when we got to the table, we saw that everybody in the family was on their device. They were on the device when nachos was served. They were on the device when most of them were done with the nachos. They placed the order, and then the order was brought to them. They had their entree, and all the way through the dessert, I think. There were a couple of exchanges during probably an hour. Maybe they spent an hour or so, let give or take, right? There was not too many conversations that happened. And then as a family, we are a family of three, and we were like, I mean, it's not like we're not guilty as charged. We have used phones, and I'm not saying we've never picked our devices, but perhaps not to that extent, right? We're not there having conversations, especially when we're eating. We try not to actually have our phones even near us, for instance. So this was interesting, and we were wondering. On paper, the family did take time off, come have. They had a family dinner, but was there a lot of interaction? Probably not.
No.
So that got us thinking, and I don't know. I just want to throw a random example there and want to get, I know our thoughts as a family on that particular experience that we had noticed. What is your take on something like this?
Frankly, Krish, this is not a random, example. It is very common example. Like I also go out and I have seen husband and wife, having dinners together and with the phone in their hands. What kind of a, imagine what kind of a, date dinner or date night is it when you have social media on your hand all the time, you know? So the reason I think is because they all are suffering from something. You must have heard recently, FOMO is a big thing which is happening. That is fear of missing out from the social media, that you're missing on something that, people are doing and you don't know. So you constantly keep on checking the phone, even if you are at dinners, if you are with family. I told you last time also, I think we, discussed this example that on the weekends when a family is sitting together, everybody has their phones on, and it's not only about the teenagers or about people my age or the elder people at home like my father, mother. Everybody is on the phone. They speak for like 10 minutes, again on social media. They speak, they are not doing anything. They don't have anything on social media. They have no friends on Facebook. They just have the habit of checking up the phone all the time. So I think
Wow.
that happens only when your connection is not that impactful as it should be with that particular person. Because
And
if
is it
I want to,
possible? Sorry, go ahead.
it is possible because if suppose me and my husband or my kids are sitting, we have a different connect from the people outside world, right? So if my kids are constantly using phone, I can very well see that there is a miss of connect. If there is no miss of connect, they will, why would they touch the phone? Why would their concentration be on something else when they are talking to their mom or to their dad or grandparents or whosoever is sitting with them? So the lack of connection, I think, is the most important cause of using constant social media. Or if you are, even if you are suffering from something, instead of speaking to somebody who's sitting right next to you, why do you want validation and things from people you don't even know? Social media is what you have. I have 354 friends on Facebook. I hardly talk to three of them, and I haven't met them for years, right? So why are you looking for validation from people you don't even know? So generation today, or the social media effect on people today, is so high. You are always constantly looking for validations, feeling insecure, feeling the fear of missing out on something, that we are maybe not up to date with the standards of my other friends or other co-workers. So constant pressure of meeting out with the outside world is, I think, is the major reason, I
Okay,
guess.
that's great, right? So you mentioned a few things. Let me touch upon each of them. You mentioned fear of missing out, but before I go there, I know our topic is social media and mental health, right? And we're going to have this conversation around an aspect of software engineering, like it or not, simply because that's the field
Yeah,
I work in, right? So it's
exactly.
not manufactured for folks who are watching. It's not contrived, but it's actually really genuine because all the examples are driven by our own experiences. So let me take the phone, and I called out for a family that did that. But let me talk about the things I do not so correctly as well. Email. We said social media, but I want might go outside the boundaries of social media in itself, because we are talking devices here. Because my example was a device, because I have no idea what they were looking at on their devices. It is very presumptuous. I'm not saying it was social media, so I want to take an example. I just counted, the other day I wanted to see how often do I check my email, right? Like how many times? I don't have an Apple Watch, and it was a very conscious decision that I did not buy that. I mean, I love Apple as a company, probably have a lot of their products, but Apple Watch isn't one of them. It was a very conscious decision. I'll speak to why it was. But I have a phone, and I check the email app, right? So as somebody who runs the company, yeah, sure, you're going to get emails from your team members, from folks outside your company. It's very understandable. During the time when we're running a startup, your day doesn't end. And we talked a little bit about work-life harmony. You had mentioned that in the last
Yes.
conversation we had. So folks, if you want to understand what Vidhi had mentioned about work-life balance compared to work-life harmony, we won't talk about it here, but you certainly can check out the previous podcast. So you mentioned work-life harmony, and it's awesome, but it's not necessarily easy to achieve. And here's what I mean by that. Going back to my email, the number of times I checked the email during the day, it it was preposterous, right? It was just didn't make any sense. And it was not that I was expecting an email or somebody to have written to me, for instance. It is not like I'm expecting a sale to be closed because I was expecting a bug to have been fixed or a
Yeah.
feature to have been implemented. It was very habitual. I have the phone. I don't do a whole lot on social media except being on LinkedIn. So the only other thing I do is use Slack, our own product, the Snowpal app, and say email. And I kept checking it. And I was like, how many times a day am I checking this email? What value is it seriously adding for me?
Exactly. That's what my point is. So the access of social media in every hand at every place. Initially when people like when we were young, when we want to see something, we used to wait the whole week to the TV to telecast it or showcase it. So now access is so easy on devices. Whatever you want to see, whatever information you want, you can just get it on a click of a button. So I think,
Right.
and that is one thing very important is that it is, I just mentioned it in the beginning as well, it's just the habit of doing it. And Apple has this very good thing that they give you weekly updates about how much usage you had on your phone. So today only I was very happy looking at it that last week was 14% less, with me. So I was like, I was telling everybody at home, see, I use so less phone. You keep telling me that I use the phone so often, and this is telling me that I have used 14% less phone in the
Maybe
last
your
week as
phone, maybe
compared.
your phone ran out of charge. Just kidding.
That's one way. That's actually a very good way of not using your phone. Put your phone on the charge, like little away from you, so that you literally have to walk up and see the phone. So you will not get up every time you want to see the phone, right? That is also one way of getting distracted from the phone. Second thing is, yeah, that is very habitual of us. I don't have actually any emails constant, like you have your own business and everything. I understand that constant emails are coming. It's not with us. It's not that every second we are getting an email. But yes, last week I was like constantly checking on my emails. If I'm not checking on email, I'm checking on my LinkedIn. If I'm not checking
Right.
on my LinkedIn, I'm checking on something else. I'm Googling something. So it's just a matter of habit, and the habit can only be changed if you want to do it, right? You have family, you have friends. Even if you want to use phone, pick up the phone, talk to any of your friends, connect with them, you know uh, literally talk to them about some hobby, or you want to start something, and you meet them instead of just spending time on liking on social media, and just making new friends. I have like what 1200 recent connects on LinkedIn. I don't even know people, and I am
Right.
not doing it because I need something from them. I need a validation. LinkedIn is just for increasing your followers. That's it.
Right.
That's a professional way of doing it. But if you're constantly looking for people from the outside world to support you, help you, talk about things, it's not going to help in the long run. So
Correct.
that's why
Right.
I
So
said that social media will add on to your isolation, add on to your anxiety and depression, because less you connect with people, less you meet people, the more lonely you will start feeling. Because as humans, we are not built that ways. We are built in a way that we need connections. We need to meet people. And I am a very big fan of self love, and you should love yourself, but it's not going to a concept that you only love yourself and stay within yourself and become a monk. No, we can't be that. You see, from the human civilization has you will always hear of tribes. You would have never heard of somebody living alone, except
Right,
from
absolutely.
when we were born. There was a single man, and then there was a woman, and then there was no looking back.
Right.
Right, so we can't live that way. So we have to understand that social media is just a medium to, keep us updated, or you just want to meet people, hang around, or something like that. That's the only thing you should use social media for. Else, there are people around, there are friends around, and because of social media you have stopped meeting friends, right? Because you are all constantly looking on your phones and constantly asking for validations on social media. It is not going to help for sure.
Good points, right? Very good points. So going just to continue with what you're saying, but also taking my example back here, right? With email. So I told myself, you know what? Do I really need to check the emails this often? So I tried to set it on my Fitbit, and I said I want to check emails like 2 times a day. That's
Day,
basically
yeah.
it. 2 times a day, for instance, or 3 times a day, whatever that number is. That works for everybody. By virtue of doing that, you get the time back. You
Back.
get the time
Right.
back as one positive. The second thing I would say is, there's a cost of context switching. I mean, there's a lot of there's studies and data on this for folks to look it up and Google and search, or use chat GPT and whatnot. But I know by virtue of reading some articles, that is, when you switch context, they say that your IQ points drop around 10 by 10. So even given whatever my intellectual cognitive ability is, if I actually constantly switch context, I'm going to
Context.
work to 10 points lesser than my capacity otherwise, which means I'm going to be less productive, which means I'm going to spend more time doing the same things, which means I have less time doing to do other things that I might possibly want to do. So these are
Absolutely.
some list of things that probably don't aren't in favor of this activity, right?
Yeah, chat GPT for that matter, like you have mentioned, like people who really like writing. Definitely, it's a very advantageous tool, I would say, to the people who write content and they like writing. But that should not limit your own way of writing, because that differentiates us from chat GPT, right? Or from social media. We have our own human thoughts, which we add, the emotions which we add to the writings. If we have chat gpt, I think all the poets will be gone. They have, like, their work is done. We don't need them anymore. And we tried this with chat gpt. So I have like two sons and I'm here. So we tried asking chat gpt to write poems on our names. Okay. And like we tried 5 6 names of my cousins and my friends. So it was so repetitive that you can actually make out that this is done through a robot, because it doesn't have anything done with emotions or something. I'm sure a lot of data has been put in, and it has taken lines and identified words and matched them with the things, and then made the whole poem, right? So so that is what I'm trying to say again and again, that social media, or be it any of the platform, is only for a temporary use. It is not something which should become so much a part of your life that you just cannot live without it. So there are ways, like you said, that constant checking of emails. So you have to limit your checks, right? You have to make sure that when you are sitting, or anybody who's sitting with family or friends on a dinner table, you should always switch off the what do you say, notifications about your social media. Because the moment you get a trigger, your mind triggers, okay, there is a notification, I have to see. And even if you don't want it, your mind keeps on thinking that there is a notification on my phone which I need to check. Just disable social media notifications for some time. Keep them aside. Like what my son does is he puts the phone upside down, so he doesn't see any of the light or any of the notifications when he's sitting. And if I do it, like I sometimes I keep checking when I'm sitting with them. So he also does the same thing with me. What he does is he puts my phone on Wi-Fi, like airplane mode. He said that I will not let you use it. So this is going to be a consensual decision between all of the family members. It's not that if one wants and other doesn't want. So I'll give you yesterday's example. I was coming from somewhere, I was driving, and there was a red light. So there was a little kid, maybe 4 or 5 years, and mom. She was driving and she was on the red light. And instead of looking at like her son, she was constantly, like, it was a 90-second red light, and she was constantly on phone. So the thought that triggered my mind was that, this is the time you need to spend with your kids. Once they are, they grow up and they have their own lives, they will not even have the time to look at you. So people are not actually, looking at these small things which they should be doing. And that this is what social media is doing to people's life. You have kids, you have husband, you have family, you have grandparents, you have parents, but who's looking after them? Social
These
media
are
is
very,
taken
these are
over.
very, no, these are important points. And you had a great example there. I want to touch upon it because I had this conversation with my other guest yesterday, which was the writing that you just mentioned. I said, uh, LLMs are going to improve as we go. So it's going to get better, like you mentioned. But with that said, as we stand today, there is an element of machine feel to these writings. When you go and read an article, it's not terribly difficult, at least as of today, as of this recording, to tell, hey, was this written entirely by Vidhi and Krish, or did they actually, write some part of this? For instance, that human touch is certainly missing. Now, the tool is going to get smarter, but till that happens, that human touch is missing. For instance, but going back to, I just want to go to context switching. Now, context switching has a cost. I mentioned that the study says your IQ points drop. So, and it doesn't, in my case, it didn't bring any particular value. I was checking these emails as a habit more so than expecting something during that. But and there are times when you're expecting a response. It's understandable, but that's not always the case. So it's not necessarily social media. Any level of addiction to anything that you do, right? That it has to be done in moderation, right?
Yes.
When it's not done in moderation, it is going to cause these issues. But let me ask you this. For somebody who says, okay, I check my emails many times, I'm on Slack, I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at LinkedIn, I'm going to TikTok, Instagram, and the whole gamut of social media and everything. I, I feel like I'm occupied. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. If I said that to play the devil's advocate, what would you tell me?
You really think you're not missing on something? That is my question to people who are thinking constantly on social media that I'm not missing on something. You are missing on the most important part of your life, that is the connections. That is the connect which you have with your family, the time you should be spending with your family. Maybe you're not missing out anything from the outside world. You know about the latest fashion trends or where your friends are vacationing or what kind of fun they are having. And that is also one reason that people are constantly on social media. That image consciousness has come, that I have to constantly see what other people are doing so that I can bring that to my life. But is will that bring happiness to your life? You can be happy without going on social media. And everything you see on social media, every day the reports are coming that whatever you are seeing on social media is not true. If you are truly
Most of
genuinely happy, you really don't have to show off this to the whole world. It is for you, your family, your partner, your parents. It, I understand. I also sometimes post when I am like, if there are Diwali celebrations or something like that. But it's not that I want to show this to the world. Okay, I was happy for a day and I shared it with a group of people, or I wanted my friends to see that I bought a new car. That should not be the intent, that you want to show off the whole world and exaggerate things, that see how happy I am. I will give you
you,
an example. I don't want to name, but we have somebody in the family, very constant on social media, very constant. And we were thinking, oh my God, every second post is from him or her, whosoever was that. And I was like, wow, yeah, she's having such an amazing life, even though, she's not married, she's not that, she's having like full fun in her life. Now, totally out of social media. What does it mean? Was she super happy, or now is she super unhappy?
right.
The constant usage of social media has created such an anxiety in people that, they just take the time off from social media forever. Because at some point of time in life, you will realize this is not true. And
You
I
know,
have seen a very recent, I don't know, it was an Instagram maybe, or some social media post was there. So there was husband and wife, and they were dressed up beautifully like some millionaires, and they were in a parking lot, and the wife was like that, I want to show off to the world that we are very rich. So there was this I don't know, Audi or maybe Merc, very super hi-fi car was parked, and they both stood there and they took the photos and they posted on the Instagram, right? And rest of the people, everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And the people who are in the middle class zone, or not that
hmm,
not earning that well, they have a average car, average lifestyle. they look at those things as if, oh my god, they are living a super wealthy life and they are going to extravagant restaurants and everything. The reality behind that video was that it was not even their car, it was not even their clothes. They hired them for that particular dinner. Imagine. So how people are, it's not that they everybody is like that. I'm sure there are super wealthy people and they
Right.
do everything. But what is the logic behind it? If you are running after people and their lives that you want exactly the same, like, do you even know what the truth behind their lives is? You are seeing what is being shown to you. It is not, and everybody doesn't show the real side on social media. Who shows your real self on social media?
Right. So, you brought up
So
so
many
many good
filters
points.
you have on the photographs. You imagine the impact of it on your mind, that you don't feel so happy sharing your original pictures on Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook. You add so many filters, you make yourself so beautiful, and then you share it. If you can't share this little thing, then how can you expect that people are real self on social media?
You brought up some really good points. The thing is, when I try to make notes, I miss out on what the speaker is saying. So I'm now trying to not make notes and still remember a lot of it. So I'm going to remember some of it at least here. You mentioned a few things, right? Many things, but I want to go with the last few items that you mentioned there. My question was, and your answer was spot on. I said, am I missing something if I truly think if I have it all? Because I'm spending all my time on social media or
Yeah.
on my devices. And your question was, so, are you truly happy? So, no, this is a very difficult question to answer, right? And sometimes we are not even sure whether we are happy or not so
Yeah.
happy. But the problem is when you have these distractions, and this is a very, recognize fully well that this is going to be a very opinionated statement, but I'm still going to make it. When you have these distractions, whether they're good, bad, or ugly distractions, you have no moment to take to have any sense of retrospective. Even for a sprint, you have a retrospective every two sprints, right?
Yeah.
What did we do right? What did we not do right? How can we improve? What could we have done differently? What did we, do completely incorrectly, and so on and so forth. Now, yeah, sprint is important because you're delivering to your commitments at work, to your employer, to your client. I understand that. But aren't you just as important, if not more important? Do we have a retrospective on about ourselves? Hey, I've spent 4 weeks living using devices in such a fashion, going to Facebook, going to Instagram, going to all these platforms. Perhaps I should have a retrospective every 4 weeks and asking myself, Krish, are you happier doing it or not doing it? What were the differences? Did you spend, like, you have a number, 14% more time spent? And then the irony of it is we have to rely on a device to tell us how much time we are spending or not spending on a device, which is very interesting, right? You have apps for everything that's possible. So, and what you're missing out on, you mentioned there was somebody at the traffic light. They were not having an interaction with a child, for instance. And you said children grow up pretty quickly, and that interaction would have been lost. Now, if the person made a conscious decision to not have that interaction, then more power. But it's possible that a lot of times we're not making these conscious decisions, much like I did not make the conscious decision to look at the email like 200 times a day, for instance. So, what you mentioned many more things, but here is my question to you. I want to ask this question to you, and we've covered a few topics, and I want to sort of pick this up in the immediate next podcast, but I want to ask you this question. Let's say I'm not certain. Maybe I'm using it a lot. Maybe I'm not using it as much. How do I sort of do that? How do I look back on things and make some improvements? What do you recommend that I do as somebody who is borderline addicted to these apps and devices? What are some things you would recommend that we do?
So, like, I understand when your work timings are going on, I understand that you do use your phone, right? Everybody uses that. We also do. You have to constant be on emails or Teams or whatever tools you are using for work. But there is time when you are taking off, right? Everybody
Correct.
has, and everybody takes breaks, and every organization allows you to do that, even between your normal working hours, right? You take a tea break, you get up, and you. So make sure that when you are taking your breaks, you utilize them like your breaks. Not like, checking every second that, oh, I have missed on a Teams message. Oh, I had a meeting to attend in 15 minutes. You have got 15 minutes to that meeting. You can utilize those 15 minutes to just relax your mind, to think about those points which are important. Maybe you keep thinking on work. It's not, there is no harm in thinking about work. But the point is that when you are taking a break or you are taking a time off with friends or family, ensure that you don't use your phone. I know it's difficult, but one step every day will automatically lead to it. It's not that you cannot do it. We were living in an era where there were no phones, there was no social media, there was no
Right.
Android or iPhone. We are from that background, right? I understand today's generation is, suffering a more lot than us, because we were not habitual. We can still, go back to those times when we were not using it. Don't I avoid on Sundays, frankly. I don't post on LinkedIn, or I don't, comment or use any social media on Sundays, especially when all the people are at home. So you have to make a mindful decision about it. It's not that it's going to come in one day. It will take time, but it will come. I tried like 6 months back, I started, and now I am at a very good space. Like on Saturdays, also, I hardly use social media. On Sundays, I avoid. Like, we have 2 holidays. I'll ensure that if kids are home and family is around, I will not use it. And plus, it also helps to develop that kind of an atmosphere at home. So if you are constantly on phone, the teenagers which are, yeah, at your home, if even if they are, like, mostly people have teenagers at this particular moment, like my age, they have teenagers 9 years, 10 years. It has such a social impact on their minds. They also keep on using social media, and they, at some point of time, they get so addicted. Even if you want to get rid of that, you will not, because you did not create that culture at home that you have to shut down your phones for some time when you're with family. Fight for it.
Absolutely.
There is no harm in fighting for a right cause. Your family is important. Social media is not important, not important. It's just an outside validation and your feeling of insecurity that you are looking for it. It has nothing to do with your personality. I think I tried social media very, late, and when Facebook and all these social media came into the picture. I did not have a phone. My husband was like, why do you need a phone? That was also one bad way of looking at it, that why do you need a phone when you are home? You need phone for a lot of things. It's not only about social media, other things as well. But initially, I was not using phones, and I was very happy with the family time and, everything doing at home. But gradually, when you start going to work, you become an important part of an organization, and then you start using things more often. But
Right.
that should not stop you from the most important part of your life, that is family, your friends who have been your thick and thins. So I think, use social media, limit the usage, and once you start, you know putting the stepping stones for it, one day you will reach a level where you will not actually feel the need of it.
Okay.
Trust
So
me, it
this,
happens.
you know, you mentioned a number of ways to sort of make some adjustments. Correct. Great points. Here is what I'm going to say. Right. There is a number of things I didn't jot it down, but I have questions in my mind to ask you. I'm going to do that. Folks, this is going to be the first podcast on the impact of social media on mental health. We haven't gotten into the uh, mental health part just as much yet. I have a number of questions for Vidhi, starting with, you mentioned fear of missing out. I want to talk about that. You mentioned comparison with that example that you mentioned of folks standing in front of a nice car
Yeah,
taking those photos. So comparison, as we know, is the thief of joy. That's the second item I want to talk about. Third is, you mentioned filters. You mentioned being able to present ourselves perhaps slightly differently from reality. I want to talk about what that means, what the extent of that is, what the impact of that is. I want to go into the demographics and what impact that could potentially have on a few different demographics, the exact same activity. Those are
exactly.
three items, right? And then I have a few more from my own personal experience. You mentioned some great points as to, hey, you know what, maybe you should avoid using them on weekends. You have certain rules, maybe put the phones further away, so you have to walk a few steps to actually pick up that phone. There are some ideas, number of ideas that you shared as well, but I have a lot of these. I want to get into a more technical detail here, if you will, Vidhi, and talk about each of these items and take some examples. Even though we cannot speak for others, for the world, we can speak with our own examples, for instance. And one of the fourth question that I actually do want to ask you, to the extent that you are able to share, is from a personal standpoint. if you were to compare yourself from the time where you probably used it a bit more compared to the times where you made those adjustments, if I mean to the extent you're wanting to have that conversation and able to share the things that you're comfortable sharing, I want to have that conversation and I can share my experience too. So folks who are watching this understand here are some differences. Here is the impact that it's had. And then last but not least, I want to, in a not so manufactured manner, tie it to our work lives. Like, at Snowpal, when we're building software, what does each of this thing mean? Going to social media, what impact does it have on work productivity, right? You talked about, family and friends and relationships is super important. At the same time, we spend a large amount of our time at work,
At
working and getting stuff done. So I want to talk about the impact of these activities on our work productivities as well, right? So these are some items I want to touch upon. I'm going to say this is the first of this mental social media on mental health podcast. Before we close this one, I prefer to close it with the folks hearing the guest's voice as much as possible, not mine. So what would you say as closing comments till we pick this up in the next one?
So, I would just recommend few things that, since you have the people who are hearing this out for the first time, go back to the first one, and it's all interrelated. It's not something that it's a different topic from the last one. We have covered a lot of things in the last topic, and here we are covering specially the effects of social media. So I would just give and close this with some few handy points to avoid using social media. The few I have already mentioned, and trust me, when you will start reducing your usage on social media, it will give you ample of time to do things which you really want to. Like, I am doing this podcast because I am away from social media now. This one was one thing I wanted to do for a very long time. Finally, when I have distracted myself from social media and looking at other people's life, it has actually given me a lot of time to do this, to exercise, to spend time on my own health and well-being. So ensure that you concentrate on other things in life. Social media work is, of course, Krish, very very important. And I never deny the fact that even if when you are at work you feel the need of getting some distraction, but one coffee with a good friend is a better distraction than social media. I would just suggest that. So go ahead with that and try using it step by step. I'm sure gradually everybody will be able to see the difference in that.
Thank you, Vidhi. Folks, I'll include Vidhi's, LinkedIn URL, so you can definitely, reach out if you have questions, and also include some details about Snowpal, which I forget to mention during the podcast, but definitely go check out our products. If you're building mobile apps, web apps, or microservices, it doesn't matter. Don't spend your time and energy and effort, building backend server-side systems, because that's what we do. We have plenty of APIs published on Amazon Marketplace and other API hubs. It's going to save you a ton of money, time, effort, energy, and a plethora of other things. So you can actually focus on solving your core customer problems. With that said, I want to thank my guest today, Vidhi Ora, for taking time out of her busy schedule to have this chat. We're going to have a lot more of these conversations, to definitely tune in to our podcast, either on Apple, Spotify, or a number of other platforms that it's available on as well. Thank you so much, Vidhi. Much, much appreciate your time here.
You're welcome, Krish, and see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.